There's going to be some talk on the program today about the state of limbo. Well, except there isn't. Except there is now, because I'm putting it in here in this segment, because I happened to mention limbo in passing, state of limbo. I wasn't referring to the religious sense of limbo, whereby some religions think there's a place called limbo. I think the Pope at one point used to preach about a place called Limbo, and then they changed their minds. I seem to remember the state of limbo being declared to not exist anymore. If there was anyone in limbo at the time, you're even more in limbo now, because the place where you are is not recognised as even existing. I suppose that's as close to being in limbo as you can get. You've been uploaded somewhere and nobody knows you're there. It's like being in a recycle bin. I emptied out my recycle bin on my Mac Mini last night, and it took about 2 hours. For some reason, when you delete stuff from your recycle bin on a Mac, it takes ages and ages and ages and ages and ages. I think it's actually recycling. It has to go through everything, take out all the shit and transfer that into the compost bin, go through the rules on the bin company's website about what you can and can't put in the recycle bin. I'll decide what I can and can't put in the recycle bin on my own computer, if you don't mind. Apple, if that's your real name. And you'll just delete it when I say to delete it. And I click on the thing that says delete permanently. That means just delete permanently. Flush it down the toilet. It's not my toilet, because we've had some problems with the pipes lately. Have to be careful about what we flush down there. But my computer isn't connected to the waste outlet of the house, as far as I know. We're not in one of those countries where we all have waste disposal machines under your kitchen sink that are connected to God knows what. Are those connected to the sewers? Or are they connected to some bag that you've got under the kitchen sink, which is no better? If I understand correctly, it's a hole in your kitchen sink and it's got blades in it. You switch it on, you put your hand down there and it gets torn to shreds. You lose a hand, then you realise the error you've made. You put your hand down the waste disposal outlet and it hasn't disposed of it because it's still hanging off the end of your arm. You can see bits of bone underneath it. Your flesh is being ripped to shreds, but it hasn't been disposed of. And the first thing you have to do then is firstly switch off whatever that contraption is that you've got in your sink. I hope to Christ you don't have children or anyone vulnerable living with you. If you've got one of those things in your sink, what in the name of Christ were you thinking? That's like saying, oh, I like having bread. I like fresh cut bread. So I'm going to set up a knife so that when you reach into your bread bin, there's knives just sticking up out of it like spikes. You can slide your bread onto. No, don't do that. That's dangerous. Don't just have moving blades in your kitchen sink. That's ridiculous. You're going to wreck your hand doing that. Anyway, you pull your hand up out of that. Hopefully it hasn't been fully disposed of. It's a good chance that it hasn't, because it'll take quite some effort for the blades to tear your hand off completely and dispose of them in the short time between you putting your hand in there and you realising that your hand is about to be torn to shreds. It's probably somewhat torn to shreds, but it's still there. The flesh is still there. First thing you do is get your telephone out. Hopefully you have a hands-free setup, or at least a one-hand phone setup. That's quite difficult nowadays. You have a smartphone in one hand and you try to dial a number on that. Even 911 or 999 as you have here. Now I'm left-handed. I hold my phone in my left hand and I would dial with my right hand if I was dialing 999 as it is here. If I was dialing 911, that would be even more difficult. I don't know. I suppose in a stretch I could do it with the other hand. But then how am I holding the phone? I suppose I don't have to be holding the phone. I could put it on the kitchen counter beside the sink. Make sure I don't get blood all over it. Because those things are expensive. Those telephones are expensive. And while your hand is arguably more valuable than your smartphone, it's not really monetarily. Monetarily, your telephone is much more expensive to replace. Except in America, of course, you go into a hospital and you say, oh, my hand is broken and now you're bankrupt. I understand that's what happens over there. I never had anything serious happen to me. that involve checking into a hospital and having to say, "Can you fix my hand, please? It's falling off and I need to stop it from falling off, because if it falls off completely, then I'm vision impaired. If my hand falls off completely, I'm going to have trouble finding it. Anytime I drop anything on the floor, it's a big deal for me. So my hand is falling off. It's going to be hard to see on the floor. So if you can just reattach my hand, please, and maybe, I don't know, can you temporarily tape it up so I at least don't lose it? You give me a shoulder bag so I can put my hand in there, like a messenger bag. Now, am I going to have to go through security at some point in this hospital? Will they want to search it? Well, I suppose it won't make much difference. My hand is either attached or it's not. Anyway, you have a thing in your sink that can chop your head off. What in the name of Christ is wrong with you? Get a bin like everyone else. Get a kitchen bin. Put it in the corner of your kitchen. You can get nice cool ones now. You don't even have to touch it. You can just wave your hand over it and it senses you and it opens the lid. You just drop stuff in. You don't even have to touch anything. They're great. They're absolutely fucking fantastic. And it's not like a lawnmower. No, your bin shouldn't have a lawnmower in it. That's ridiculous. That's like having a guard dog guarding your bin. You can't go past the dog. You have to put the rubbish in through the dog's mouth, down through its trachea, and down into its stomach. And that's where the bin is. Into your head! Listening to this on the bottom step of a stairs at the entrance to a lighthouse. You're not on the ground floor because there's no ground floor in this lighthouse. You open the front door, or someone opens the front door to you. Immediately the stairs is there. There's no entrance hall. In fact, whoever comes down to answer the door will probably need to be standing on the third or fourth step, because there's literally no space between the bottom step and the front door. There's no ground floor hall. That's why the floor up at the top, where the light of the lighthouse is, that's considered the ground floor, because that's the first floor you get to. The stairs starts immediately at the front door, goes all the way up, so there's no ground floor down there. So that's the ground floor, is wherever you land when you get off the stairs. And if that's the top of the lighthouse, so be it. It's a lighthouse after all. You're there to do lighthouse-related business. Well, maybe you're not. If you're calling round to this lighthouse, maybe it's a sales call. Maybe you're selling the latest light bulbs. You're a light bulb salesman, probably not specialising in lighthouses, because there's not very many. People will always need lighthouses. They need somewhere to put their lights. You can't just put them in the sea. Or can you? Where you bin it? Surely the Christ they can just put a light in the sea and not have a little skyscraper with a man living in it. Do they still have those? I don't know. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. I don't know. There was a lighthouse down here in my local town here. There's a little lighthouse at the end of a harbour wall, I understand. I haven't been there in about 20 years. I don't walk around harbours. They're the most dangerous place to walk. There's absolutely nowhere you would catch me going along an unguarded pier in a harbour on a harbour wall. I would say they're almost as dangerous. In fact, probably more dangerous than a canal path walk for the likes of me. So no, I won't be. Don't go accusing me of not caring or knowing enough about my town. I know I live on a coastal town with a nice harbour. I don't go to the harbour because it's fucking dangerous. That you get blown into the sea the minute you move. You have this grey concrete structure called a harbour wall. It's there to keep the sea out, but then you know it also keeps the sea in. So you're being picky. You're saying we keep that water out and we keep that water in, and we'll use the water in there. We'll use that for boats and things. The water out there, we'll just use that when we leave the harbour. To be fair, on the harbour wall, you're protected from the outside sea. There's a wall there above you on that side. But then on the side facing inwards, you can walk off the pier and you end up with a charred pelvis because you fall through the sunroof of someone's little boat that they have parked in the harbour there. And then you fall into the sea with all this salt water. You have these huge wounds. You slide off trying to get away from this broken glass and you land in the sea. And next thing that happens is you're covered in salt. These harbour walls, they can make the water cosier and safer and calmer a little bit, but they don't filter out the salt. They manage to keep salt out of the rivers and lakes naturally. And you have canals, I presume they don't have salt in them. But you have a harbour that's walled off and used as a permanent home for these boats. It's effectively a parking garage for people's boats. And they can't keep the salt out of that. So if you go down there and you graze your knee, maybe you're climbing down the ladder into a boat and you graze your knee against the harbour wall there, and then you get a splash from a bit of water, and then you're full of salt. You're no more safer in the harbour than you are in a big tub of burning hot salted popcorn that you're sitting in for some reason. Perhaps you passed out on the beach somewhere and you're laying on a bed of popcorn. You had a bit too much to drink earlier and you purchased a whole bed of popcorn. Perhaps a salesperson took advantage of you and sold you a whole bed of popcorn and you're lying on that. You fell asleep on the salted popcorn. You thought you were safe because I don't know why you thought you were safe. Maybe you thought it was sweet popcorn, but no, it's salted popcorn, which is far more dangerous. Or it wasn't when you sat down in it because you weren't sunburned yet, but now you're burnt to a crisp. And you have salt in your... wait a minute, does salt hurt sunburn the same way it hurts open wounds? Maybe it doesn't. I suppose it does. The burn is pretty much an open wound, isn't it? Bits of your skin burned off or opened up. Surely to Christ, that can't be very comfortable being covered in salt. Don't test it. I am curious now as to whether if you got sunburned and went to sleep on a bed of salted popcorn, would you wake up in more pain than you would from just the sunburn with the salt? Cause your sunburn to hurt as much as it would cause a paper cut to hurt if you were covered in paper cuts. I don't know. But let's not go and find that out. We can think about it in our brains. I don't need to go down to the harbour to find out whether or not it's dangerous for me to walk along the pier, for example. No, I can figure that out in my brain. That's what the imagination is for. That's what your mind is for. You think. You open up your mind and you think, okay, I'm going to have a good long think now. What am I going to do today? Am I going to walk down to the pier and walk along it and hope my sun hat makes it slightly more easy to see so I have 10% less chance of falling into the sea and drowning in salt? I don't know. I don't know, you have a harbour. Apparently there's no way to keep the salt water out of it. Maybe the idea is nobody's supposed to be swimming in the harbour. You do that at the beach or at the swimming baths or something. It's meant for boats. Swimming in the harbour is considered like playing football on a highway or something. Maybe that's the idea. You're not supposed to go swimming in the harbour. I suppose that makes sense. But then, if you have an accident on a boat and you fall into the salted water, it's not like you've been swimming there on purpose. It's still going to be a problem. But I suppose you could say the same if you fall out the side window of your car in the middle of a motorway and get run over. They might say, oh, this highway isn't meant for people to be running around playing on. And you say, I wasn't playing. I fell out of my car. I got blown out of my car. I'm a dog. I was looking out the window as dogs do with my mouth open because my tongue is too long for my mouth. So I hang my tongue out my mouth. And I do that into the wind. So I had my tongue hanging out. And then I think I must have accidentally opened the door. There's some sort of handle. There's a child lock on it, but I'm not a child, I'm a dog. It might stop a child, but a dog who has twice as many limbs as a child. Well, no, that's not true. Funnily enough, a dog has exactly the same number of limbs as a child. Well, a child lock is designed to stop a child who has 2 hands and 2 legs. A dog has a different structure. A dog has 4 legs or 4 paws. Now I know the front paws are more likely to be used. The front paws are as close as a dog can get to having hands, and the back paws, they're as close as the dog can get to having legs. In fact, they are legs. So when a dog is sticking its head out the window like that, its hind legs are kind of flat. Underneath it, maybe you can hit against something that a child wouldn't normally hit against with its third and fourth hand. I don't know. Suffice to say, a child lock on a car isn't designed to keep dogs in. A dog could well fall out through that door onto the highway and end up, God knows, let's not think about what would end up happening to it, because that's awful. Hopefully it'll just end up harmlessly falling onto the soft grass verge, and the people in the car will notice something's wrong and they'll gently pull over and nobody will get harmed in any way whatsoever, not even the children who are in the back of the car. I think that would be the best outcome to hope for there. Since this is all imagination, we can give it the best possible outcome. So now, let's say that's what happened. The children were in the car and the dog was in the back of the car looking out the window and it fell out. But everyone ended up safe and well, so it was absolutely fine. Well, I say fine. The dog fell out of the car. That's very traumatizing, not just for the dog, but for the driver, the children, for whoever's in the front passenger seat, for any other dogs or pets who are in the car, for anyone outside the car who sees this. If you're in the car behind and you see this happening, that's going to traumatize you, seeing a dog falling out of a car. It's not something you see a lot of. I saw a dog getting run over once, or at least I told myself that. I was standing outside the school once waiting for a bus, and we heard a noise from the other side of the road. The dog has just been hit by a car. So I don't think I actually saw the moment the dog got hit. But I knew it had gotten hit by the car. It was kind of obvious. There was a car and there was a dog, and then there was a dog and then there's a car. I think the dog survived. Someone came and did something regarding the dog. I don't know what happened with the car. Did they do a hit and run? I don't think it did. I'm not sure. Well, something happened involving a dog, and a big line of horrified school children, including myself, were standing waiting for the bus across the road. I think that's probably when they started having a system whereby the children would queue inside the school gates. One of them would be at the bus stop watching out for the bus, and then when he saw the bus coming, that kid would tell the other kids to come out. That might have been caused by the dog thing. Now, I mentioned about how dangerous it is to fall into the sea that's full of salt. It's not much better, to be perfectly honest, on land. Because if you go out on an icy day and you slip on some ice, which is terrifying, you don't know what's going to happen when you slip on some ice. But one thing you do know, if there's ice on a road, there's a good chance that it's being treated by the local authorities with salt. So you can get salt water that you slip on. It's probably starting to melt, but it's still slippy. That's why they put salt on it. So you slip on ice on a perfectly dry road that's covered in ice. It's not the sea. I say a dry road. I know it's not dry if there's ice on it. It was dry before it started snowing, presumably. That's why the snow sticks, and then the snow turns to ice. Or I don't know. We don't have much experience of heavy snow in this country, so I don't know exactly how it works. But I do know that if they salt the roads, you're crossing the road one day and you slip on the ice that's been salted, you get a big bruise or something on your chin or your shin. Well, you have two shins and one chin normally on a standard human being. So if you fall and hurt either your chin or one of your shins, there's a 66.66% chance that he hurt one of your shins and not your chin. And there's a 33.33% chance that you hurt your chin because you only have one chin and two shins. Now, you probably expect me to go into something about people having two chins now and how that changes the odds. But no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to have a cheap shot at people who have more than one shin. No, that's just tacky. So no, you won't do that. You fall, you hurt your shins, and you bruise that, and then there's salt on the ice that the county council have put down to make it safer. It hasn't started working yet, that's why the ice is still there. But the salt is there, fresh salt, and that gets into your wound. You may as well have just fallen into the water. At least when you fall into the water, well, maybe not in your country. If you're listening to this in America or somewhere where you have sharks, you're probably thinking, I'd much prefer that to happen on the road than in the water. Because if it happens in the water, there's a pool of blood around me in the water, and next thing you know, there's these sharks. These sharks. You have so many sharks, other countries, such as, for example, America, which I think I just named, because that's where most of you are. Let's be honest, most of you are in America, and you have sharks. I know you have sharks because you have an annual thing called Shark Week on the television. I've never seen it. I presume it's a telethon. You sit there, well, you have some fella there, it's probably some comedian, is it? And he does jokes and he tells people to call in to give money for shark documentaries. So everyone gives money for shark documentaries and you give them all. This is on Discovery Channel, though, if I remember rightly. I think it is it? And that's a commercial channel. So they're raising money through a telethon for shark documentaries. And most of the stuff they show is probably repeats anyway. If they're doing Shark Week every year, I presume they make one or two new shows about sharks every year, and then they repeat all the old ones. So every year you're getting, maybe 6.5 days of repeated old archive programs about sharks, and then maybe half a day of fresh, original shark programming. They go on Google and they say, give me everything, absolutely everything that is known about sharks. Give me that on a page here, Google. And Google says, certainly, here's some YouTube videos about how to watch Shark Week. And then you'll say, I don't want YouTube videos. I want to read. I'm able to read. So give me stuff that's not a video. And Google will say, certainly, here's some videos that have subtitles. And you say, it used to be a search engine. And now you go, oh, here's some videos from YouTube. That's like if Yahoo happened to own, I don't know, what would they happen to own? Do they own anything, Yahoo? I don't know. Yahoo, for you young people, was a web directory in the early days of the internet. You go onto the Yahoo and the front page will be a directory of the internet. Here's a list of news sites. Here's a list of entertainment sites. Here's a list of whatever else they had on there. They had other stuff. They had lots of stuff. Yahoo of bollocks. Is a load of bollocks. Delete this part. Suffice to say, you slip on the ice that's being treated with salt. In this country anyway, where there's no sharks, it's as dangerous as falling into the sea in the salt water with a wound. At least the salt water washes the blood off. I know if the salt gets into you, when you're on the road, it doesn't wash the salt off, doesn't wash the blood off, gets all over your clothes. If you're in the water when you get these cuts and they're bleeding, you fall straight into the water, then the water washes the blood off straight away before it gets a chance to seep into your clothes. So that might save you a bit in laundry. Although if you have an accident on the road, the first thing the emergency services do when they come along, no matter what, because they love doing this. I was reading a thing about this the other day. These emergency services, especially the ambulance workers. Oh no, it was about an A&E doctor. He says that for one thing, everyone in A&E takes pride in the fact that they own a huge, gigantic pair of scissors that they keep on them. In a road accident, the first thing they do is start cutting away at their trousers, no matter what. Doesn't matter what your injuries are, to say, first thing you do is have a go at them with this scissors. They cut the clothing off, no matter what. So if you do have an accident on the road rather than in the sea, although you're... Actually, no, it doesn't matter, because your clothes are going to be covered in blood, you're going to throw them out anyway. No, I'm contradicting myself there. So my point was that if you have an accident in the sea and you're bleeding, the sea washes the blood straight off before it can soak into your clothes, so your clothes might be saved. If it's on the road, the blood's going to soak into your clothes, but they're going to cut your clothes off anyway. So. And then, of course, you're in the hospital. They've saved your life, which is great, these emergency workers. They brought you into hospital, you're in the emergency room. You spend a couple of days in there recovering. Then they say, right, you're recovering now. It's time to go home. We're going to check you out. And you go, okay. What about clothes? And then they'll say, that's none of our business, sir. Clothes is not our business. We're not even a business. We're a government-owned emergency room. Why, was there a problem with your clothes? And you say, well, it wasn't a problem. This isn't a complaint or anything. But when the ambulance people found me on the ground bleeding to death, the first thing they did was take out his scissors and start cutting away at my trousers. And then when I came into the emergency room here, the first thing they did was start cutting away at my under trousers. Now, my injury was on my neck. It was nothing to do with my trousers at all. And that's all fine. I know they have to do what they have to do. There's no time to be thinking about clothes. But now, if I'm going to be released from hospital, I'm going to need to get some clothes or else get arrested trying to get home from here. They'll say, why would you get arrested, sir? It's not illegal to be injured. And you'll say, no, but you can't be going around with no clothes or in a hospital pajamas thing. So if you wander around to the bus stop in your hospital pajamas, the police will say, oh, that fella must have escaped from the hospital. He must be either a lunatic or there's something wrong with him, which is very sad and tragic. His brain isn't working properly and he's wandered out of the hospital. We bring him back to the hospital. And that can end up going on and on. You keep getting released and you keep getting brought back by the police because they're very diligent in their work. Quite likely, if they see someone wandering around in hospital clothes looking for a bus, they bring them back to the hospital. That's not a complaint. They should do things like that. It's important. But still, it doesn't change the fact I'm going to end up like that Tom Hanks movie, The Terminal. And then they'll say, I suppose you could go down to the gift shop and get some clothes. Now, you don't have to tell them that they're not a gift. Just go down and say, hello, do you have clothes? I want to buy some clothes, please. And they'll direct you to the clothes and say, over there, that's where the clothes are. And you say, oh, thank you very much. I'll go over to where the clothes are. Can I try some on? And then they'll say, I don't think so. You're already wearing hospital pajamas. I think you've been provided with enough clothes for your stay here. You're supposed to be wearing pajamas in here anyway. That's how it works. You don't need outside clothes in here. And you say, but I'm about to be let out. And they'll say, that's a likely story, sir. You're about to be let out despite the fact that you're wandering around in your pajamas looking for outside clothes. I don't think so. I don't think so. Let's call the police and see what they have to say about this.
Into your head.
Once upon a time, there was a dog. 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 Basically a dog. And this dog, he was walking along the street one day, minding his own business. Not that he had any choice. Wasn't as if people were coming up to him, sharing their business with him, saying, oh, hello, can I talk to you about my finances? I need some financial advice from you, strange dog on the street. Not that he was in any way strange, he was just a normal dog. How would you define a strange dog anyway? You'd have to get to know it first to find out if it was strange. If you met a dog in the street you'd never met before, or perhaps you had met it before, but you only see it once or twice because it's someone else's dog, you probably just pass it in the street. It's unlikely that you would know for sure whether or not that dog is strange, whether it has a general characteristic of being strange. Even if it behaves strangely when it meets you, for the few seconds every few days when it meets you in the street, that might be just how it reacts to you. You have no idea whether that dog is strange or normal. That dog could be the most normal dog on the entire planet, but it behaves strangely when it sees you. Because of your ego, you think whatever it does when it meets you is a defining characteristic. You're going to judge that dog forever because of that. Oh no, that's unfair. That's unfair. You're doing that dog as much of an injustice as the justice system did when they put the Guildford 4 and the Birmingham 6 into prison in England in the 1970s, or wherever it was. A couple of miscarriages of justice, as they were later found to be. I don't know the exact details. Something to do with bobbings. There was that movie, In the Name of the Father. It was about either the Guildford Four or the Birmingham Six prison convicts who were found to have been wrongly convicted and were eventually let out. The ones who hadn't died in prison. How did I get from dogs to that? Hold on a minute. Oh, I don't know. I somehow got from dogs to that. How did I get from dogs to the Birmingham Six and the Guildford Four? And which one is In the Name of the Father about? Is that the Guildford Four or the Birmingham Six? I can't remember. I've only seen it once. I saw In the Name of the Father in the same cinema in which I saw The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy on the same day that I went to see half of Queen perform live with your man. Your man out of that thing, who's very much not Freddie Mercury, but he was fine. He was absolutely fine, wasn't a problem. Wasn't the young fella who's touring with them now? No, not the kid off America's Got Talent or whatever the other thing was. Oh, incidentally, I think I said a week or two ago that your man whose name I was trying to remember, who used to introduce America's Got Talent, I was on about him. I said that he used to introduce America's Got Talent. I was mistaken. He introduced American Idol. Or I was mistaken and said he introduced American Idol when in fact he introduced America's Got Talent. Whichever it was, the opposite was correct. So just to put that straight, what else? Oh yes, the Guildford Four and the Birmingham Six. I paused and went back and listened to that initial segment about the dog, because I was genuinely wondering how I got from the dog to IRA-related miscarriages of justice in 1980s England. It turns out I was saying there was a miscarriage of justice in that you were assuming the dog to be a weird dog just based on the few seconds that you see it every few days, someone else's dog. The rest of the time is completely normal, and that's a miscarriage of justice. Not that the dog is being locked up for it. Well, it could be if you happen to be a dog warden or something, and you see that dog behaving weirdly, and you say, that dog is behaving weirdly. Now, it's not doing anything wrong, so I'm not going to lock it up or anything. I'm going to refer it to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist may commit the dog to a mental institution for an indefinite period. But don't worry, it won't be locked up in jail or won't be put on death row. It'll just be put in a place that's a bit like the sort of place you see in a Robin Williams movie. Just what you know. Less humans and more dogs. Less people, more dog. Well, probably. I don't know what the dog to human ratio would be in a dog mental asylum. I presume there'd be more dogs than humans. How many people do you need to control a dog who's locked up, who's presumably in a padded cell or in a room or something, and there's leashes and other contraptions, so probably fewer staff per head than you'd expect in a special primary school where there are kids who are being assigned special needs assistants as well as their teacher. Sometimes you find a kid who's being assigned a certain number of hours of special needs assistance in a school, and you might find they get maybe 3 or 4 hours a week per kid, depending on the assessments of their needs. I think you'd find that a dog in a dog mental asylum would not be assigned anywhere near as many hours of special attention as one of those children would. And rightly so, because there's less work involved in controlling the dog, and you're not trying to educate the dog. Although you should be. If it's a proper mental institution, it should be about helping the dog get back to leading a full and normal life. Well, a full and doesn't matter whether it's a normal life, it's safe to others. As long as it's safe to others, you can set it free to go. That dog should be attending classes in that asylum every day. If necessary, AA meetings or whatever the equivalent is for a dog. What's the equivalent of AA meetings for a dog? I know they're unlikely to be alcoholics, but there's all sorts of 12-step movements now that have grown out of AA that are nothing to do with alcohol. Drugs programs, for example. Now, I know the dogs won't be addicted to drugs, although they might be. If a dog is being prescribed drugs by a vet and it's got addicted to those, yes. But I don't think a dog is going to be able to sort that out by attending meetings regularly. You can't just go into a meeting and they go, keep coming back, Doug. You're doing very well. One day at a time, you didn't take any drugs today. Not that it's up to you. Whether you take drugs or not is up to whether or not the vets here choose to inject them into you or put them in your sausage sandwich or wherever they give a dog for breakfast when they're trying to get drugs into it. I don't know. It's a long time since I've had to give drugs to a dog. Anyway, there's this cinema called the Savoy in the city centre of Dublin. I went there to see Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I think the very first time I went there was to see In the Name of the Father. I was about one of these groups of convicts that were convicted of being involved in some bombing, and they spent years and years rotting in prison cells. It was called In the Name of the Father, I think, because there was a father and son among the prisoners, and the father died in custody. And then there was the son. So it's probably said, In the Name of the Father. I presume he made some speech when he came out and says, I'm saying this in the name of my father. Now, I know that's going to sound confusing because it's also the opening lyrics of the very famous prayer, the Lord's Prayer, which is also known as the Our Father. It starts in the name of the Father. Oh, no, wait, it's not. The Our Father doesn't start like that. No, it's a blessing. A standard blessing in a Catholic church starts with in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, or the Holy Ghost, or wherever your local dialect uses. So no, that's not the Our Father at all. The Our Father was a different thing. The Our Father was one of the main prayers you say in those churches we used to go to as children. You had a Hail Mary as well. They had all sorts of ready-made prayers. You can look them up and you just rattle them off. Do a session of the Angelas. Or what's that one? Oh, it's not the Angelas. That one where you walk around. There's 12 pictures around the walls of the church. You go up to each picture. Each stage, you stop at a picture that's depicting various events from the original Good Friday. The rosary is the thing where you get a necklace and you go through all these beads, and for each bead you say a prayer, and then you get every 10th bead. It's a bigger bead. You don't even have to look at it. You're moving these beads of the necklace through your fingers, and every 10th one you go, oh, this one's slightly bigger. That means you have to say a different prayer for that one. So you say a different prayer for that one, and then there's another 10 little beads, and they're all Hail Marys probably, and the big bead is the Our Father, because that's the big one. And then you do about 50 or 60 of them, and you get around to the end of the necklace. And hopefully you're paying attention, because if you don't notice when you get to the end, presumably it's marked by either a gap between the beads or a different size of bead or something. If you're not watching out for that, you'll end up getting stuck in a loop and getting stuck doing the rosary forever. And I believe quite a lot of people have that happen. And they accidentally become monks or nuns as a result. Because someone says, oh, that fella's clearly committed himself to a life of prayer and meditation because he hasn't put down those beads in at least 4 weeks. You won't move him or interfere with his thing or anything. We'll do exactly what you do when you find someone who's in a car crash. You can't be sure that they haven't broken their spine or their neck or something, so you don't want to move them. The paramedics get some sort of a board and they put it under you and they strap you to it to make sure you don't move your neck or your spine. And you do the same if you find someone who's stuck in a rosary beads loop that they can't get out of or they don't want to get out of, you're not sure yet. You leave that up to the people in the hospital to determine that because you're a paramedic, not a medic. You let the doctors decide that. Your job is to just maintain the status quo and make sure no further damage gets done. So you find someone who's stuck doing a decade of the rosary in a never-ending loop. Perhaps because it's faulty rosary beads. There's nothing to mark that you've got to the end of your rosary, so they keep going round in a loop. What you do is don't touch them, don't move them. You get some sort of trolley. Hopefully they're in a chair or they're kneeling on a mat or something, so you can slide this trolley underneath them and pick them up very carefully. A pallet truck would be ideal. So you slide that under them and lift them as they are. Don't move them, just lift them exactly as they were. Don't encourage them to move or anything, and get them to the hospital exactly in that position. And then the hospital can sort it out there. And then you've done your job as the paramedic. Now, of course, you get to some of these hospitals in this country, they're run by nuns and things, so they have a religious slant on them. So you bring someone in there who's stuck on rosary beads in prayer. There's a chance one of the nuns there will recruit them into the nunnery. And hopefully they'll make an honest assessment as to whether or not this person genuinely wants to be stuck in the rosary circuit forever, or they've just done it accidentally. Anyway, suffice to say, if you're one of the surviving members of these bands, the Birmingham Six or the Guildford Four, oh no, they're not bands. Well, bands of brothers, I suppose, in a way. Alleged bands of brothers, falsely accused of being bands of brothers in some terrorist brotherhood. They hadn't done anything like that. Someone said, oh, you did that. You've been caught red-handed. And they said, caught red-handed doing what? I'm just standing here. They'd say, yes, standing there. You probably had a remote control in your pocket. You probably had both hands in your pocket. One of the hands was a decoy. So you kind of fidgeted in both pockets at the same time, so someone could point at it and say, oh, you're clearly setting off a bomb with your hand in one of those pockets. I just can't tell which pocket because you're cleverly using both hands. Don't do that. Oh, Christ. This is going to be another episode that I can't get any TikTok clips out of. You can't be saying bombings and things in the TikTok clip. No. So let's move on from that. Anyway, this cinema, the Savoy Cinema in Dublin's Upper O'Connell Street, one of the finest cinemas known to man. There's very few cinemas left now, though, so that's not really a big compliment. All of the other cinemas in that area are gone. There's one directly across the road from it that was demolished about 25 years ago and then spent the next decade or two as a fake cinema. They had hoardings up in front of it and they painted a picture of the old cinema on the hoardings. So it was like being on a Monopoly board. Except at least on the Monopoly board you have actual 3D houses and hotels. They're made of shitty plastic and they look like shit, but they're actually the shape of a house. I don't know if you've ever played Monopoly other than on a screen if you're a young person. But Monopoly used to be a board game. You'd lay out all your shit on the big table or on the floor. You'd had fake money. Everyone would be handed out fake money. You get £200 every time you pass go, every time you do a circuit of the board. You had dice. You had metal avatars. Everyone wanted to be either the cat or the car. For some reason, one of the avatars was an iron, of the type that you iron clothes with. You'd buy up properties along this board. They were all named after streets or roads in your local city, if you got your local edition of Monopoly. We had the Dublin edition of Monopoly. It had O'Connell Street on it. That's where the Savoy Cinema is. You'd buy that part of the board that was named after that street, and then you start putting houses on it. You get these 4 little plastic green houses, little tiny plastic things. They look like shit. But at least they weren't 2-dimensional like the screen cinema after it was demolished. They put up a hoarding and just painted a picture of the old cinema on top of it. As if to say, here's a picture of the thing that's being knocked down. It's never coming back. We're going to spend the next 20 years arguing about planning permission as to what to put here. I think they've decided what to put there now, except they were going to have some sort of covered street, kind of a mall laneway thing. And then during COVID, someone decided, oh, COVID is here. For the rest of our natural lives, it's going to be much better to be shopping outdoors than in. So it's one of those roofs that's high up above you, so there's all air coming in under it. Might as well be at a bus stop. It's a place called Dundleary in the suburbs of Dublin. They decided we need a new train station building on this train station. So instead of building a building or using the old building that's actually there, they built a fake building. They built a thing that's kind of on a bridge over the tracks. It's like a wide footbridge, except this footbridge works as the station building. Instead of a roof, there's a kind of shelter on top, but you're not really indoors. It's just enough to keep the rain off the ticket machines. Dún Laoghaire train station was the terminal, I think, of one of the first train lines in Ireland. I know trains have to go from one place to another, but they have to build one of the train stations first. They might be building them simultaneously, but I'm sure they don't finish at exactly the same moment. Not if they're using resources properly. The last thing that they install is the ticket machines. They'll do that at one station and then do it at the other station. They won't have duplicate teams of ticket installers, especially when these are the first two train stations in the country. They won't have duplicate teams of train ticket machine installers, especially not in the 1800s when these stations were built. One of the stations will have been the first to be built, and at one point, for a short period, there was only one train station in the country, and you couldn't go anywhere from it. You go into one of these train stations now, and you automatically say, "Oh, I've had enough of being here. I want to go somewhere else." Your first thought when you go into a train station is to start thinking of another train station that you want to get to. So I've had enough of this. It's just like those of you who have children, you bring them out to some park and they'll say, "Oh, where are we going next? Where are we going next?" You can't enjoy the moment. Exactly the same when you go to a train station or a bus stop. You start thinking about your destination. You can't just enjoy the train station that you're in. Now, in your defence, it's very hard to enjoy Dún Laoghaire train station because of that stupid fucking building they built. It has walls that go halfway up, and then it's no roof. It's just like a bus shelter. Absolutely appalling. That's what it is. It's an appalling setup. Oh, yes, and just to mock you, they've left bits of the very old train station building. They've left the walls of that somewhere outside. They're not in use for anything, but they have these huge walls. They're just enough to block a very nice view of the sea and to provide a windbreak between one train track and the other, but they're not part of a building anymore. They're just kind of there. Probably a protected building. Admittedly, it's not a building anymore. If you stand at a bus stop outside the station, the billboards on that wall are at eye level. You can look across there and enjoy the billboards, and then your bus goes past while you're not looking because you're facing away from the road then. And then you sit there for 50 minutes and then you realise your bus doesn't go that way. And that was my experience anyway. Maybe yours was different. I don't know. Now, where was I going with that? Oh, yes, they installed a fake cinema facade opposite the Savoy cinema. After they shut down the screen cinema, they put a fake facade of the screen cinema building in there on an empty building site while they were deciding what to do with it. And this remained in place for years and years and years. It might well still be there. I'm not sure. I think they've decided what to do with it now. This cinema, the Savoy, its competition is a fake cinema straight across the road. Tourists will go down the street in the afternoon and they'd say, "Will we go see a movie later?" Or a film, as the locals call it. "We'll go see a film later." I see there's two cinemas here. There's the Savoy over there and there's the screen cinema over there. The screen cinema looks nice. It has a facade that looks like it's painted or something. Very old-fashioned, picturesque-looking cinema. I'll come back later and see what's on there. I don't want to go to that Savoy place over there. So then they'd come back, and by the time they'd figure out that that cinema doesn't exist anymore, it would be too late to go and see a film in the Savoy because that would already have started. I know you're probably thinking, wait, they'd figure that out surely. They'd look up what's on and they see there's nothing on in the screen cinema because it hasn't existed for 20 years. No, but they'd show up at the screen cinema and they'd stand around outside hoping for it to open at some point. And since by definition it doesn't open at some point, it hasn't opened at some point for at least 20 years, by the time they'd sit and figured it out, they're probably enjoying the scenic views of O'Connell Street. And they don't notice the time is ticking away, and by the time they figure out that that cinema doesn't exist anymore, all of the movies have already started for the evening over in the Savoy, one that does exist. So the Savoy is losing business to these people, and the Savoy is going to go out of business if it's not careful. That's what worries me. Oh yes, you do have one of those IMAX cinemas round the corner, and another godforsaken hellhole called Parnell Street. And IMAX is like a It's a cinema, but everything's in stereo or something, and it's not black and white anymore. It's all up to date, and you have fancy pictures. You can watch your fancy pictures on a fancy big clear screen. I don't know. Are they even big anymore? The last I heard, Savoy Cinema was splitting its famous big #1 screen into 2 screens. They're going to split it up and just have smaller cinemas. Maybe the screens take up less space now that there's flat screen TVs. I don't know. That's nonsense. Delete that last minute or two. That's absolute shit. That's pure shit and tripe and muck and dirt and filth and shit. Absolute pure tripe. That's what it is. 20 years of tripe. That's what this is. That's cinema with the facade. It probably hasn't existed at all in the 20 years that this podcast has existed. And yet the facade is still there. Facade is still there. That's a lesson to all of us. You stopped living 20 years ago, but your facade is still there. Perhaps that's what you think of you. Well, far be it from me to say I don't know who you are. Maybe that's brought up feelings like that in you. You're thinking, oh, that sounds like me. I'm a fake facade of a person who you're dead inside. Is that what you're saying? Well, that's a bit pessimistic, if you don't mind me saying. That's a bit pessimistic. You're not dead inside. If you're listening to this, you're not dead inside. Your brain is still working. You're able to hear this. Or you're deaf and you're reading the subtitles that you can get on some apps now, on podcasting apps, whatever. You're absorbing this somehow. Now, if you're reading the transcript, you're probably not getting the tone of this. Probably not getting the tone. It's probably better that way. I don't know. Either way, you're not dead inside or outside. You're alive and fine. You're listening to this. You're absorbing information. As long as you're absorbing information and media, you are alive. Now, that's not a medical opinion. I'm not qualified to give medical opinions. If I was qualified to give medical opinions, the standard that I'd have to adopt to verify you being alive would probably be much higher. If I was doing this as a medical thing, I'd probably have to apply higher standards and say, oh, I'm not quite sure whether you're alive. And you probably still are alive, but to declare you medically alive is probably a higher standard I have to go by. I have to see if you've got a pulse for one thing. I haven't checked your pulse, so you could well be dead inside, I suppose. A different standard. So like you see people on Twitter sometimes. Well, I don't, because I don't read Twitter anymore. I used to see people on Twitter or X, and they'd say, that fella's guilty. That fella killed 85 people, I'm declaring it now. And then they tweet at some journalist, why aren't you saying this fella's guilty? And someone would point out, if they could be bothered replying to these arseholes, that a journalist doesn't say stuff like that because they must have higher standard of checking and verification than you. Some anonymous drone on a website. They have to actually double check facts and get the evidence and stuff. So I suppose there's that. See, I might still be dead inside. I can't declare you to be alive medically. I can't declare you to be dead either. So you have the best of both worlds, I suppose. You're neither dead nor alive. You're in limbo. It's a limbo where you can do whatever you want. If you want to say you're alive, that's your business. You go ahead and do whatever you want. It's fine. Unfortunately, the same is not true for a cinema that was demolished in the 1990s. So there's that.
Are you going into your head?
Anyway, this Doug, he's walking along the road, minding his own business, not really doing anything very much at all. He's just minding his own business. He doesn't know what anyone else's business is, and if he did, he would say, is this any of my business? And if it's not, they say, oh, don't tell me about that then. Don't tell me about this any further if it's none of my business. Please ascertain first, before you tell me anything as a dog, or share anything with me as a dog, please determine first of all whether or not it's my business. If it's not my business, please don't tell me, because I don't want to get an undeserved reputation for absorbing information that's not my business just because you forced it upon me without thinking. Because that's not fair. That would be another miscarriage of justice. If I'm a dog and I'm trying to mind my own business, my intention is to mind my own business, and you just start distributing information into my ears that I can't very well cover. I can't just put headphones on or something to block you out because I'm a dog. I don't have hands or a Walkman, and you're just going to tell me stuff that I can't just blank out. It's very hard to not listen to something when it's being just said to you. It's very hard to say, oh, this is none of my business. La, 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 I can't hear you. Because you can be going, la, 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 I can't hear you. And it doesn't mean you can't hear them. You can still hear them. Especially if you're a dog. You've probably got excellent hearing. And the dog isn't going to put its fingers in its ears. Not least because it has no fingers. The nearest thing it has to fingers are these claws with sharp nails in them, and God knows where they've been. They've been walking around in dog shit. So you put your fingers in your ears as a dog. Firstly, you're going to infect your ears with God knows what. You're probably also going to damage your wrists or your heels or whatever you call those. Because those aren't real fingers and those aren't hands. They don't work the same way as a human. We're getting back to this topic of dog architecture again. Let's not go there. We've done enough dog architecture the last few episodes. No. Since its return 2.5 years ago, we seem to have spent half of the podcast talking about dog anatomy. It's been getting a bit weird. No, enough dog anatomy. I don't even have a dog. I haven't had a dog in well over a decade. I have cats. You notice I don't say a lot about cat anatomy. No, I don't. Well, firstly, privacy. I don't go telling you about my cat's private business on here. Just as the dog minds its own business in the story, I mind my own business regarding the cats. I don't go telling you about their private business. I don't go posting endless photos of them on social media. Because cats are not an accessory that you go out and posting. I did used to post a lot of pictures of my cats on social media, as it happens. I don't really take photos anymore. I'm over that. There's more to life than taking photos. So if you're a dog and you don't have hands, you don't have opposable thumbs. Now, I think by opposable thumbs, I presume to mean a thumb that's pointing a different direction to the way the rest of your fingers are. It's kind of at a right angle. Is that what an opposable thumb is? I think so. Something like that. Apparently, once you have an opposable thumb, it changes everything. Changes absolutely everything. If you have an opposable thumb, the minute you grow that opposable thumb, your life changes forever. You're never going back. You're never going back to not having an opposable thumb. Unless you have one of those waste disposal machines in your sink, of course. And even then, you're only going to lose one of your opposable thumbs. You'll still have the other. I wonder, is there things that you can do with two opposable thumbs that you can't do with one? That's the thing. I suppose one of these child activities they do in school or in the Boy Scouts and places like that. They used to get us to get out a pencil, they give you a big sheet of paper, you put one of your hands flat on the piece of paper and you draw around it with a pencil. Now, if you only had one opposable thumb, would that work? Would you need your pencil to be in the hand that has the opposable thumb? And then you'd only be drawing around the hand that has no opposable thumb. And you'd hand that in as your exam paper, and they'd say, no, that's not a proper drawing of your hand. There's no opposable thumb in it. That's only a partial hand. You failed. And that would be a bit cruel, wouldn't it? I mean, for Christ's sake, you're supposed to make accommodations for people with disabilities. So hopefully they have some way around that. Waste, though, an opposable thumb. I suppose if I have a hand and I've lost my opposable thumb, I suppose I could draw. I suppose. Well, it might be more difficult to write or draw freehand without an opposable thumb. I think perhaps I could trace around my hand with a pencil without an opposable thumb. So I put my hand that still has an opposable thumb, I put that down in the paper, and then maybe I hold the pencil in my other hand between two of my fingers or clenched in a fist. Oh, I think I could still do that. Yes, I'm trying it out, trying the action now on my desk. I'm not using a pencil, and I can't see my fucking hand because it's blended in with the desk. Well, no, I think I can do that. In fact, I wouldn't even need to be able to see it. So, in fact, this is quite a suitable exam for a person like me. I have two opposable thumbs, but I'm vision impaired and I have difficulty seeing my hand. I can't really draw. So I can't see my own handwriting, but I'm pretty sure I could trace around my hand on a piece of paper like this with quite reasonable results, as good as anyone else could. I wouldn't really need to be able to see it. So that could work. That's quite encouraging, actually, now that I think about it. Does that mean I have an unfair advantage then? Well, no, because everyone can do that. Well, no, I suppose that's the thing. The only thing that would be a problem is if they start prescribing, telling you which hand they want you to draw. They said, yeah, if your left hand had no opposable thumbs, and exam question said, trace a picture of your left hand. Well, then I suppose they're in the wrong then if they say, oh, no, you traced the hand that doesn't have a thumb on it. You failed. No, they wouldn't do that. It wouldn't be that cruel, surely. Well, not on purpose anyway, but they might do accidentally. People setting exams make mistakes sometimes, so that could well happen. Hopefully, someone will be confident enough to point it out during an appeals process after the exam results come out. Well, still, that would cause quite an inconvenience. Hopefully, it would be spotted early enough. Hopefully. Hopefully. So that's how hands work, anyway. What did I begin this with? I don't know. I'm just looking at my other hand. That's got a ring on it. It's probably never coming off because it's pretty much wedged into my finger now. My finger has grown around it. So there's a ring that's on my ring finger on my left hand. If I was to draw around that with a pencil, there's a good chance it would look unnatural because there'd be a narrow bit of my finger where it's kind of squashed up by the ring. I wonder would I be penalised for that in an exam? Probably not, because I stopped doing exams about a quarter of a century ago, and I wasn't wearing a ring at that time in my life. So I suppose unless I go back as a mature student, and that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. There's going to be no more. I've learned enough for one lifetime. There's no way I'm going back learning anything more. I've learned everything I need to know. 22 years ago or something was the last time I went on a course. I went on a web development course and I learned how to make the website that this podcast is on. And that's all I need to know. So that's that. That's done and dusted. I have enough knowledge now to keep me going for the rest of my life. I don't need to know anything else. Any more information that comes into me is superfluous. I want to avoid it like the plague. There's such a thing as having too much information. The young people recognise that. They have this acronym for too much information. They say, oh, TMI. They don't even say too much information because that's more information than is needed. They just say TMI. And then people go, what's TMI? And they have to go, it stands for too much information. And then they'll say, oh, I see. Sorry I made you say that. It's not too much information, though, because I didn't know what TFI stood for until you said the full words to me. So in my case, you're not overloading me with information. You're giving me just enough, so I appreciate that. You weren't going to say too much information if I understood what TMI meant without being prompted. So that's very considerate of you. And of course, this young person will say it back to you. They'll say, too much information, biatch. And you'll say, what in the name of Christ? And they'll say, you're old. They say, you're old, what's that song? There was a song in the 90s. You're old. There was a rock song where it's one of them groups. Not extreme, but one of them rock bands. Because you're old. You're old. You're old. Oh, I forget. It was kind of a novelty rock song of kinds. In a way, oh Christ, I'm going to have to do editing for that now. I have this set up this week so that it blocks out anything that's not music. Gets automatically filtered out so I don't have to deal with mouth noises. Well, now I've put that harmonica in, I'm going to have to edit that back in. I tell it to block out anything that's not music or voice, and it blocks out my harmonica automatically, and I have to put it back in. That's going to be extra work now. So it's not really work, it's my pastime. I have no business calling this work. It's not like someone comes around and says, "Oh, are you finished doing your harmonica editing yet? Your unfiltering of your harmonica that was filtered out of your work this afternoon." No, my mouth's getting sore now too. Did something to my mouth again, I'm not sure what. I don't think it's a mouth ulcer this time. I think it actually injured it by banging it on something. Could well have banged it while sitting right here. I could have banged it into my iPad stand or something. I can't rule that out. Very possible. It feels like I banged the front of my mouth against something. I don't know. And you're probably thinking, what, do you not remember what you banged it against? No, I don't. I'm quite clumsy, so I injure myself quite a bit with mild injuries, so I don't really take any notice while it's happening. It's only when it causes problems for me later, when I'm an hour into recording and I go, oh, my mouth's sore now. That's annoying. I didn't hit it with a hammer or anything. I'd have remembered that. I know, I think I probably walked into something, or more likely I bent over and hit it against a cupboard door or something like that. That's the sort of thing I do. That'll happen to you someday. Everyone's living longer now. Your generation is going to live to be about 140. And what they haven't told you is that by the time you're 80, if you don't yet have dementia or something, you're going to have everything wrong with you. You're going to be half blind. You're going to be half deaf. Your legs are going to be falling off. You're going to be addicted to everything. You think you're addicted to social media and telephones now. Imagine how much more you're going to be addicted to being locked up 140 years of doing that non-stop. You're just going to get more and more and more addicted. Not going to be enough hours in the day to fill your addiction. You're going to think, oh, I want to be on the phone 26 hours a day, and there's only going to be 24 hours in the day, and you won't have a lot of spare time because you'll be working until you're 110. It's going to be a miserable life for you, I can tell you. But at least you get to live longer. That's good. That's good. I envy you. You, the next generation or 2 or 3. Anyone who's listening to this in the 24th century, perhaps on the Internet Archive where I upload all these. You're listening to this and thinking, oh, did people not always used to live to 150? No, they didn't. There was a time when you used to die if you didn't flush your toilet. You'd die in your 30s because you didn't have sewage to carry all the diseases away from you. They'd invented flushing mechanisms on the toilets, but they weren't connected to anything. Most places didn't have pipes. It'd be like flushing a toilet in a show house. You go to view a house, you flush the toilet in there. You're not really supposed to because it's not connected to anything. It's just a show house. That's how you cause disease. I suppose I could drink some water. I don't want to break open a bottle of water. It seems a bit extravagant. I've just finished a big mug of coffee. I thought that would be enough to lubricate me for the extent of this session. I've changed things up. Up until recently, I used to finish all of my coffee and energy drinks before I got started in here. But no, I have a new thing where I have a big thing of coffee and I bring it in here while it's still hot and sip it. But I finished that now. I think that was what was holding back my mouth from being sore. We needed lubrication. I do have a bottle of water there in a glass. If I open that up and pour some water into it, then that bottle is going to be open, so I'm going to have to reset this room for next week. I don't like to have to reset this room. It's not a fucking hotel room. I don't want to have to reset it every week. Take out the drinking glass and replace it with a clean one, and then put in a fresh, unopened bottle of water and find somewhere to bring the open bottle of water to make sure it doesn't go to waste. Because you can't just open a bottle of water, drink a bit out of it, and then just leave it in here and come back to it 2 weeks later for the next episode. That's wasteful. I suppose there are ways around that. I suppose it's not exactly like resetting a hotel room. It's the nearest you get to a hotel room in a house. As near as you're going to get. Unless you actually have a hotel room in the house, then you get nearer. But that's not really a hotel room, is it, if there's just one room? I think we're approaching the end of today's episode of Into Your Head podcast. Goodbye. Now don't stop. Don't just stop listening there. If you noticed, I haven't stopped speaking, so there's no reason to stop listening just because I've said we're approaching the end. We have this conversation every week, getting a bit repetitive, isn't it? I suppose it is. Well, we are approaching the end. But I think by now I've instilled in you the fact that just because I say we're approaching the end of the program, that doesn't mean you switch off straight away. So I'm pretty sure you haven't switched off straight away because you're an attentive listener, except that's the problem. You haven't switched away or skipped on to your next podcast on your playlist because I have you trained not to do that now. But I think your attention is wandering. So you keep playing, you say, no, I'm not going to switch this off until the end. You don't want to be one of those idiots who thinks as soon as he says, I think we're approaching the end of the show, they skip ahead. Because he's always criticising those people. I don't want to be one of them. But no, your mind is wandering, so I'm glad that you're still playing the show right until the very end of the programme and not skipping ahead. I'm disappointed that you're not paying attention to what I'm saying anymore. You've checked out, and metaphorically, if not physically, your mind is wandering onto other things. Now, it is your mind. You're perfectly entitled to wander. Your mind is entitled to wander, and you're entitled to let it wander. It's not for me to police what goes on in your imagination and your brain or anything. As a service to you, I'd like to train you to keep focused on what's coming out of my mouth here, unless it happens to be a subpar segment or a particularly disappointing episode overall. In those cases, I'd like you to just keep kind of half listening but not paying attention. Last week's episode would have been possibly one of those, except the content was perfectly fine. There was a problem with the sound quality last week. It was a bit crackly. I'm not sure if it was from an error I made or it was just my voice because I had somewhat of a cold. I think my voice was sounding a bit odd. In a case like that, I'd like you to listen through to the whole thing, but only half pay attention, listen to the content and admire the thoughts that I'm putting forth, which I thought many of them last week were quite impressive, the thoughts that I put forth, without paying too much attention to the voice. That'll be a later stage in my training of you. For the moment, I'm glad I've trained you not to switch off the minute I say, I think we're approaching the end of the show. I want you to be paying attention. There's more than background noise. Those of you who listen to subscription satellite radio, when you're listening to Howard Stern nowadays, you certainly are not listening to him as background noise. You're thinking, oh Christ, I'm paying for this with my hard, cold cash coming out of my paycheck every month in my Sirius subscription, whatever it is. I'm going to pay attention and get value out of this, because if I get through this 3-hour interview with Billy Joel, I don't remember what he said, I'm going to feel like I'm wasting my money. Which of course you are, because that Billy Joel interview was on YouTube for free. It's one of the few bits of Howard Stern that you can get for free. I know when you buy a car in America, a lot of the time you get a year free of Sirius radio. So maybe a lot of the people are listening to him on that. But even then, I think now they have to pay for an upgrade. Even when they get the free year, do you have to get Howard Stern as an add-on? I don't know. And what about the Oprah Winfrey channel that you're paying for? She's on it for about half an hour, 6 times every decade. You're paying for that. You better damn well be paying attention for the 2 seconds when she comes on and says stuff. Or are you just there to listen to her friend, perhaps? I don't know. Do you have an Oprah channel on subscription satellite radio in America? Not the Oprah TV channel. This is a different thing. Some weird talk radio lifestyle channel. I've never heard it. But from what I understand, Oprah's best friend, whoever it is, I can't even remember whether it's a man or a woman, Oprah's best friend, who we're always hearing about, has some sort of program on the Oprah radio channel. So you're supposed to go, oh, I'm into Oprah. Her friend is on this channel called the Oprah channel. It's probably called Oprah and Friends or something. They should just call it Friends. Of course, they probably weren't allowed to do that. You can't just call everything Friends. No. Anyway, I think we're approaching the end of the program, so goodbye.